Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news, as some quite interesting news comes out that the Glazers may have tried to sell Manchester United to Newcastle's new owners, which really does open the barn door on our suspicions, or certainly my suspicions, that we are into the end game with the Glazers because they quite simply cannot afford to run this football club anymore. So we'll delve into that. We've got the quotes. This is directly from the chairman of Newcastle, basically saying that they were offered 30% of the football club for £700 million. We'll delve into that, deep dive into that, analyse that, and basically some people say it might not have even been Manchester United, but I think that the more you look at it, the more it sort of may well fit. So we'll talk about that. I also want to talk about Ronaldo versus Martial. This is clearly going to be Ten Hag's big decision. It's got massive ramifications for both players. We know that Ronaldo probably wants to go in January. We know that Martial will want to go if he doesn't start. So there's a decision to be made there. What is best for Manchester United in the short term and the long term? And also some quite interesting discussion to be had about Casemiro. Have we actually made Casemiro rustier by not playing him over the last 6 weeks? Or was it right to let him adapt to the Premier League when he's one of the best players in the world? We'll talk about that as well. But before we get into all of that, you can see I'm wearing my Boohoo Man Active hoodie. You can get your Boohoo Man Active range wear from the link in the description, or by scanning the QR code. You'll get 40% off as always. But as always, because we are sponsored by Boohoo Man, there's a little bit of interactivity for you. It's all about looking good and feeling great. And as the weather gets cooler, you can look cooler with the Boohoo Man Active range. 40% off with by scanning the QR code or by going through the link in the description. But we're going to have a little bit of Man United trivia here. This week we're going to change it up a little bit though. Wanted to test the chat's knowledge and see if you know which of these ex-United players are currently playing for. What club are they playing for? So if I said to you Ravel Morrison, does anybody in the chat know who Ravel Morrison plays for now? Who does Ravel Morrison play for now? Do you know? Daniel Kirk says, I saw the preview last week. You said our defence can have one bad game without being dropped. Did you change as it's the only the Europa League? I'll come back to that, Daniel. You're the second person to say that, and I'm somewhat confused by how narrow-minded and naive some people are. It's a Europa League game, mate. You don't play your first team in the Europa League and then play them on a Sunday, Daniel. You don't do that. So, DC United, well done. Next one, Raphael. Played 109 games for United. Who is he playing for now? Who is Raphael playing for now? Well done everyone who got DC United. He's not playing for Middlesbrough. Who is Raphael playing for now? Former Brazilian right back. He's not playing for Liverpool. No, he's not. And whilst you're thinking about that one, what about Gabriel Obertan as well? Who knows where he's playing? Of course, while you're answering those questions, as always, Boohoo Man have given United Stand a discount for this video by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the description and using the code GOLDBRIDGE. You could get 40% off at Boohoo Man and get yourself something fantastic like this delivered to your door. 40% off by scanning the QR code or going through the link in the description. Thanks very much to Boohoo Man for supporting us. Actually, according to this, Rafael plays for Botafogo in Brazil right now, and Gabriel Obertan is at Charlotte Independence, which is the third tier of US soccer. There we go. Would you swap Donny for Tielemans in January, says DJ? I don't want to rock DJ. Probably not. Probably not. I just want to see what happens with Bruno Fernandes. I just want to see what happens with Donny van der Beek. Anyway, let's get straight into the show. You didn't do very well with those quiz questions, did you? So let's give you a bit of a background here. This story came out late this afternoon saying that Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, the PIF, which has bought Newcastle, were offered a 30% stake in a Premier League club believed to be Manchester United for 700 million before they bought Newcastle United. And this is a direct quote from their chairman of Newcastle, who says, in the UK, there was a team that approached us on the basis that we take 30% of the ownership and we don't interfere at all in terms of managing the club for 700 million pounds. Obviously, they chose to go with Newcastle, but the Telegraph and obviously the Mail and a few other people are, basically insinuating that it's believed to be Manchester United who did this. So they've owned Newcastle for coming up for a year, which would mean it would have been longer than a year ago that Manchester United offered 30%, if it is Manchester United, to this to the Newcastle owners. There's all sorts of ramifications with this. Some people think it could be Chelsea because Roman Abramovich was looking for a way out. I don't think Roman Abramovich was looking for a way out, So Manchester United is the logical one. But if this was offered, it was offered over a year ago. So it does still make sense. They have a part in Chelsea too, says Tumbleweed. I don't know what that means. It does make sense that it's Manchester United because I actually tweeted earlier there's no way that it's Manchester United because 30% for 700 million means that 60% is 1.4 million, which means that 90% is 2.1 billion. So therefore, they're valuing the club at under £2.5 billion, which seems a bit cheap for Manchester United. But then again, if you're getting 30%, but you're not going to have any say in it, maybe it's a discounted price of £1 billion, maybe. I don't know. And you get it for 700 million. But it does make sense. It does make sense. And it makes sense exactly what I've been saying is that they cannot continue to own Manchester United without investment. They cannot afford to invest in that club and keep taking the dividends and servicing the debt. They need to build a brand new stadium. So they need private investment or they need to sell. What it appears to be is that they want the private investment. If you remember a couple of months ago, there was talk of a US hedge fund investing 25%. This is talking about 30% for 700 million. It looks like the Glazers, the Saudi investors, says Tumbleweed. I still don't know what you're talking about with Chelsea. That it looks like the Saudi investors were offered by Manchester United and the Glazers 30%, but having no say in the club for 700 million quid. I don't know whether that's good news or bad news. If they'd done that, if they'd agreed to that, the Glazers would have got an influx of cash to build the stadium, but they'd stay in charge of the football club with 70% and 30% off to the Saudis who would have no say in it. So they'd be here for another 10, 20 years. That's my worry. My worry is that somebody will go, yeah, we'll have 30% and be a silent partner. You can use our money to build a stadium. And then when we get the big Super League money, we'll double our money and everyone makes money. I don't like the sound of this. And I think if it is true, and look, there's always a big if, but they are saying in the press that it's believed to be Manchester United. If that's true, I think it's more reason to be very concerned about the Glazers' ownership because they need to sell. They can't afford to run this club anymore. But if they're not willing to sell because they want to get 30% investment in, that means that they need to sell the club, but they still don't want to sell it. They still want to milk the cow, so to speak. So it concerns me a little bit. Mufasa, welcome, and thank you very much for the super chat there. It does concern me a bit because if they find somebody gullible enough to actually give them 700 million for 30% and let them carry on, then we're screwed because I don't think that the protests are doing any harm. I don't think that the Glazer out constantly that you see on social media and everywhere is doing any harm at all. But I don't think it will make them sell. I think what will make them sell is that they've got no bloody money to build the stadium or reinvest into the club and keep servicing the debt and their own dividends. So it's interesting that would have been a year ago. But the positive is that they are looking for investment. And the positive is that somebody with the money that they wanted said, no, we don't want to do it for no say. So I still think it fits in with what I've been saying and what some of you have been saying is that I do think we're into the end game because they have to get private investment into that football club. And they clearly are struggling to do it. And thankfully, everybody's got their head switched on at the moment and is saying, we're not giving you a shitload of money for no say in that football club. Which is where I think Sir Jim Radcliffe and others have come in. I think they're saying, look, we'll give you money for 25%, but we're gonna force you out. We want a say in the club and we are going to force you out. So basically the best situation for everybody is that the Glazers realise the party's over and they need to sell. But it looks like they're still trying to keep hold of this football club because it makes them so much money. And they basically want to get some private investment in. So I'm encouraged by it, but I'm also a bit concerned about it because if somebody actually does decide to invest and let them stay in charge, they could be here for another 20 years. Mark, I literally asked if you changed the defence because it's Europa and then you say I'm naive. Just a question, says Daniel Kirk. You're about the third person to ask it me, Daniel. That's why. And you're still not listening. You're trying to say that I'm saying don't drop your team, don't drop your defenders after one bad game. If we'd beat Man City, I still wouldn't have picked Martinez and Varane on Thursday. It's got nothing to do with losing to Man City. we need to rotate the team because it's the Europa League. Some people need to be rested. I thought we'd made that very clear. There were reports that the Glazers were travelling in person to talk business with the Saudi government about the time. Chairman mentioned today, says delegate official. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. And people that back Newcastle have a part in Chelsea, says Tumbleweed. I don't know. I don't know about that. But I don't think it's Chelsea that were offering up 30% for 700 million, because this was about a year ago when Roman Abramovich was not under any pressure to sell the club. So, look, whether there's any truth in this or not, and if you've tuned in a little bit late, the better statement is this. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, who have bought Newcastle, were offered a 30% stake in a Premier League club believed to be Manchester United for 700 million before they bought Newcastle United. If that is true, there is a concern attached to that, like I say, because it shows you the Glazers aren't going to leave this club without a fight. They want to get the money in that they can't afford to rebuild the club, rebuild the stadium, etc., that they know they have to do, but they want someone to give them that money and let them stay in charge and be in charge. I mean, at the end of the day, it's what the Glazers are trying to do is, if you own a mansion and you don't want to sell it, but you can't afford to run it anymore, it's like saying to your neighbour who's loaded, can you give me a couple of million? I'll let you have 30% of the house that I'm never intending to sell, and also you've got no say in what I do with that money at all. So that's basically what the Glazers are trying to do. The fear is there will be investment funds out there that go, yeah, I quite like the sound of that. Let's have a look at your books. Okay, so we invest £400 million for 20% or £700 million for 30%. We have no say in it, but in 10 years' time, that 700 million becomes $1 billion. Okay, let's do it. So, and that's my worry. That could happen, and I think the Glazers are trying to do that. It's quite similar to what Barcelona have done, pulling levers, like raising money from different things, but keeping hold of the club. And I think the Glazers would like to try and do that. But hopefully nobody will bite on it, and then they won't get the money, and then they'll sell. The greed with which the Glazers are trying to hold on is only worsening the situation for them. They need to start the process of selling after the World Cup, because another 2 seasons under them, we could be out of cash, says Mojo. Yes, and whatever you think about the Glazers, and I don't think there's a United fan out there that's positive with regards to the Glazers, do look at it like Mojo said there. They've run the club into the ground ever since they bought us. They've straddled us with debt. The stadium has decayed. The structure within the football club from top to bottom is rotten. We're incompetent. Our reputation is in the mud on and off the pitch. That is where the Glazers have left us in 2022. And yet they still want to keep hold of us. They can't afford to spend the money on the things they've left to decay. So they want somebody else to give them the money so they can keep hold of our football club. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting when you look at it like that. Over the last 16, 17 years, they've just decayed this football club, and they should go. And they're now trying to borrow money from other people so they can stay here and decay it some more. It's unacceptable. But, you know, I wish the Premier League had a pair of balls. I really do. I wish they, you know, go after the Glazers and say, this is not how you're going to run a Premier League football club. This is not how you're going to run an institution like Manchester United. You're not getting private investment in. If you can't afford to run the football club, you can go. That's, you know, we need a bit of teeth in the regulatory side of football. But as I say, the flip side is, what if they were sat there not needing to get investment? They'd never sell. So there is still a positive there. It could be a negative, but there is still a positive there that they haven't got the money. And I said this after the Man City game, and I said it last week, and I said it a month ago. I don't think the protests and everything like that are actually going to be the thing that forces them out. I think they help, but I think the fact that they need to build a new stadium and they need to spend a lot of money on the club, and our revenue is dwindling and sponsors are turning their back, they haven't got the money, and I think that's what's going to force them out. Stephen Rossi says, if the Glazers made that move, what would stop them from making similar moves in the future until there is nothing left to offer investors, says Stephen. Yeah, and we don't want Manchester United Football Club dissected as well. I think that's a good point. And people will say, well, come on, wake up and smell the coffee. Most organisations have shareholders that dissect a football club up. But you don't want, shareholders are one thing, you don't want the Glazers with 70% and then another investment fund with 30%. You don't want that. We want people to own the club who actually care about Manchester United. We don't want percentages going to bloody money men who are just here to make money out of us. We don't want that at all. Not at all. Drop a like on the video, says Smutty, thank you. And if the Glazers made that, yeah, we've done that one. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. As I said, it is quite a big development, because if it is Manchester United who've tried to sell 30% for 700 million a year ago, a year has passed since then, and they still haven't found the money. So, you know, with every passing day, I think the end gets closer. But it might not be imminent. It might not be imminent. We'll have to just wait and see. I see. It's not speculative news. It's coming from a number of outlets, and it's coming from the chairman of Newcastle. So that there's definitely something in it. And I think logically, there's only two football clubs it could be. It's definitely not Man City, and it's definitely not Liverpool, and it's definitely not Arsenal. There's no other club in the Premier League. If it's not Man City, and it's not Liverpool, and it's not Arsenal, there's only two clubs that you could sell 30% of it for 700 million. Considering Newcastle was sold for 350 million altogether, there's no football club that's worth 700 million for 30%, apart from Manchester United and potentially Chelsea. But it can't have been Chelsea when you think about it, because it was a year ago. It was longer than a year ago. And as somebody said, Man United a year ago were going to Saudi Arabia. The Glazers went, I think. So I think it probably is Manchester United. And if it is Manchester United, that means in the last year or so, the Glazers have looked to sell 30% of this football club. And if they're looking to sell part of this football club, it's a step forward. We just hope it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Fans need to be considered when they are buying the football club. Thank you very much. I've got a really bad feeling about our future, says Times End. Yeah, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. I do worry about it. We're in very, very, very bad hands with the Glazers in charge, and they could hand us into. They could drop us into the worst situation. I mean, I think that what we've always said before I move on, if I was the Glazers or you were the Glazers, we'd actually care about the football club. So after 17 years of failure, would I be going around the world saying, who's going to give me 700 million for 30%? I need to stay because I get dividends every year. Come on, who wants to make money out of Man United like I do? Come on, who wants it? That's basically what they're doing. If I was them, I would sell it. I'd go, I've absolutely messed this football club up. I love this football club. I nearly said I hate this football club because that's probably what the Glazers think. I love this football club and I want it to succeed. I'm going to find a good buyer, and that's going to be my legacy, because I'm always going to be disliked, but at least if I can leave it in a safe pair of hands, at least that's some good I've done. They don't give a shit about us. They don't care. They don't care about the protest. They don't care that we don't like them. They don't care that we've been unsuccessful. They really just do not care. They don't care so much that they'll actually still try and keep the club and get a silent investor in to keep the money rolling in. They don't care. They just don't care at all. Man United need to stop milking the cow, says Alian. Glazers were lucky that Tom Brady wanted to go to Tampa, otherwise they'd have to sell the books too, says Andrew Fletcher. And the cheek of them to take huge dividends out during this as well, says Times End. Yeah, make sure you smash the like on the video, by the way. Anyway, so look, that's where we are with that. We could talk about it all night. It's, as we always say, if there is credible stories to talk about in relation to a potential sale of Manchester United, then we'll always discuss it on the United Stand, because I think ultimately this is what we all want. But I'm not going to milk that story any more than it is. It's potentially Manchester United trying to sell 30% for 700 million a year ago, and Newcastle owners said no and bought Newcastle instead for 350 million in its entirety. So, but I firmly believe, I categorically believe, I factually believe that the Glazers are trying to get investment in because they haven't got the money. And if they can't get the investment in, then they're going to be looking to sell. And that is where it's like this. I think something is going to happen. It might not be a good thing, but I think something will change at Manchester United in its ownership structure. Worst case scenario, we get some hedge fund funding it for 30% and let the Glazers run it. Best case scenario, they sell, go, and we get a good signing. Let's see what happens. I think the Saudis were also interested in Boca Juniors, says Bobby Fraser. And United books aren't lucrative. Glazers increased overdraft limit just to give themselves dividends. That's a disgrace. What's going on in there? Oh my God. 1 minute. Absolutely ridiculous. I'd love to tell you what that was all about. In fact, I will tell you what that's all about. So I'm working in my room and somebody in my household is banging on the wall because they're scared of a bloody spider. Oh. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, let's move on. The Glazers. Yeah, we'll move on from the Glazers. So let's talk about the a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. I've got to finish in about 10 minutes because I'm doing the watch along for Rangers against Liverpool on That's Football at 8 o'clock, so we can continue the conversation there. Two things I want to talk about though. Spider-Man. Mark, do you think if we don't make top four, there is a possibility the board will sack Ten Hag? Things like having saying contracts will trigger the Glazers, says Rash. How would you feel if we signed James Maddison? Mufasa, we are not buying James Maddison. So I'm not. How would you feel if we bought Messi? How would you feel if Haaland walked across to Manchester United and said, "I want to play for you"? Like, it's not going to happen. We're not signing James Maddison because we haven't got the fucking money to buy James Maddison. This club is broke. We're not. I mean, there was another article today about us not buying players in January. We haven't got any bloody money, mate. I don't know where they found the money for Casemiro and Antony. God knows how that's going to bite us in the arse. We were trying to buy Arnautovic and Rabiot for under 30 million quid, and then we suddenly spent 160. Like, that is dodgy. I'm telling you now, that's going to bite us on the backside. How do you go from negotiating for Arnautovic and Rabiot for under 30 million quid combined, and then suddenly spend 60 on Casemiro and 100 on Antony? Something dodgy went on there. They've done something. They've gambled somewhere, they've borrowed somewhere, or we're going to pay it back somehow. That will bite us in the arse. So if you think we're going to buy James Maddison from Leicester for 60 million or something like that, you're having an absolute laugh. There ain't no money. There's no money. They can't build a stadium. They can't sort Carrington out. And I don't think they've got any money for players. I don't. Unless they're going to go into more debts. Because, let's be honest, they have spent money over the last 10 years badly. Talking about that, though, we do need a striker. And I really want to... In fact, we're going to do a poll on this. That's what we're going to do. I want to do loads of polls on That's Football later. Who do you pick? I could have done better with that. Ronaldo or Martial? Right, okay. So I genuinely think you can rotate them both. It might not be as simplistic as saying, who do you pick? But I do think at the moment you've got Cristiano Ronaldo who's sat on the bench and wants to leave if he doesn't get picked. And then you've got Anthony Martial who is back from injury for now and will not sign a new contract unless he's the main man. What would you do? Do you go with Martial, who's younger but injury prone? Or do you go with Ronaldo, who's better but 37? What do you do in the short term? What do you do in the long term? I don't think you can go in the long term. I don't think you can long term go with Ronaldo because he's 37. And I don't think you can long term go for Martial with any, certainty because he's so injury prone. In the short term, what do you do? Everton. Who do you start with? And I'm taking Rashford out of the equation. There's no way Rashford is a number one choice ahead of those two. But if I'm thinking about the Everton game, who are you going to start in that game? Now, we have got Thursday night to see, and obviously Martial scored 2 goals at the weekend. And of course, you never know, Eric Ten Hag could do a press conference tomorrow and say Martial's out for another month because he's a bit like Cavani at the moment. But who do you start against Everton? And I think it's really difficult. I normally have a preference, but I think it's really difficult. If you're giving me prime Ronaldo, and I mean last season Ronaldo, I'm starting him. He's a better player. He's a better striker. He's a better finisher. And he's better in the air. And so I'll go with Ronaldo. But if you're comparing Ronaldo, what he's been like this season, to what Martial's been like in the little glimmers we've seen in pre-season and the couple of games he's played, probably would go with Martial because he's got a good all-round game and he's a bit more mobile. So it's a difficult one. But I think that decision's going to happen unless Ten Hag takes Rashford out of the equation. puts him on the left-hand side and basically says, Martial and Ronaldo are my strikers. You get an hour, you get half an hour. Now you have an hour, you get half an hour. That could be a way around it. But if Rashford's in the equation, then you're going to have to pick between Martial and Ronaldo as to who's the backup or the striker. So look, let's have a look at the poll. 55% going with Ronaldo, 45% going with Martial. If I had to choose, as I've just chosen, I think if Ronaldo continues like he is, you'd go with Martial. If Ronaldo gets back like he was last season, I'd go with Ronaldo. Which I know is a little bit of a vague answer, but I think form has to be taken into the equation. And not forgetting that, if I'm being honest, if I had to go for one or the other over the next month, I'd go with Ronaldo because he'll be fitter longer. He's more reliable fitness-wise. So, but yeah, I personally like the idea of combining the two. Not in the same team, but we've got to look after Martial's fitness and we've got to look after Ronaldo's legs. So actually, they should just complement each other. Half an hour, whatever, every game. Opinions on Sancho, Mark? He's been very disappointing, says A. Janey. I think Sancho needs a bit of time out of the team. I like Sancho, but I think when we become more of a possession-based team, I think he'll play well. Gamer says, either way, there's no future for Ronaldo or Martial. Could be another cartridge with the spider. I'd pick Ronaldo as he's better and available, says Gamer. And try playing both, 4-4-2. No, Igsham, we can't play 4-4-2. We're not going to play 4-4-2. I don't think Ten Hag's ever played 4-4-2 in his life. I don't think we've played 4-4-2 for about 15 years. We're not going to play 4-4-2. You could play Martial off the left, but then you're benching Sancho and Rashford, which seems silly to me. I think you need two strikers. One of them starts, one's on the bench. Rotate. That's what I would do. Yeah, that's what I would do. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was Casemiro, just very quickly. Casemiro, I was reading something today, and I can't remember where it was. So I put my hands up. If anyone knows where it was, well done. They were basically saying that Ten Hag's handling of Casemiro is ridiculous. He talks about him having to adjust to the Premier League and fitness, and actually he's made him rustier than he was when he signed. And it got me thinking, actually, some people will say, well, the reason Casemiro's not been playing is because he needs to get up to pace with the Premier League. Up to pace with the Premier League. Liverpool are probably the most intense team in the Premier League last season, and Casemiro played against them and was man of the match in the Champions League final. He doesn't need to get up to pace with the Premier League. He's one of the best CDMs in the world, so I don't agree with that for a start. So if he comes into the Premier League and he's ready to play and we don't play him for 6 weeks, have we made him less fit? Question mark. Probably. And let's not forget, Ten Hag's excuse was, and I hate the word excuse because it makes it sound like you disagree with it. Ten Hag's explanation was that when Casemiro came to the team, signed for us, we started winning, and he didn't want to change a winning midfield. So I don't think it was anything to do with fitness, but I do agree with that. I do think that Casemiro's been here for 6 weeks, and he doesn't look any fitter than when he made his debut in that cameo from the bench. He looks like you can only learn so much training. You need to play games, and I don't think we've given him enough game time. I really don't think we've given him enough game time. So I don't know whether he's actually started a game for United yet, has he? He's always been a second half sub, I think. But yeah, I think there is a point there, and it's about time he started playing games, and I'm sure he will do now. But I don't think we've utilised him correctly. I think his fitness has suffered by not starting any games for Manchester United, or many games if he has. Didn't Rangnick play 4-4-2 Diamond, says Nee. Is Rangnick the manager of Manchester United now? We're not playing 4-4-2. We're not going to play 4-4-2. And Mojo says, the Glazers lately bid for a cricket franchise in Dubai for $1 billion, which they won. And they also bid around $1 billion for a cricket franchise in India for IPL, says Mojo. That's very interesting if it's true, because that will make people panic and say they've got no money. But how are they paying for it? The Glazers would never pull £1 billion out their pocket and buy anything. That will be structured the same way it was Manchester United. So I would like to know, if that's true, where the £1 billion is coming from, because it won't be coming from the Glazers' pocket. They won't have £1 billion. And even if they did, they don't want to spend it on a new stadium at Manchester United. This is a club they've kept in debt for 17 years. £500 million of debt for 17 years. They've got £1 billion. They certainly don't want to spend it clearing our debt. So they certainly don't want to spend it building a stadium. They could have £10 billion in their bank account. They don't want to spend it on Man United. So if you're trying to say, well, they're trying to buy an Indian cricket team and they've got the money to buy it outright, well, whatever. They haven't got the money to spend on Manchester United. They don't want to spend it on Manchester United, which is why they want investment. So, yeah, they're just, they're bleeding us, they're milking us like a cow. Ronaldo in, much better team chemistry, says Marco. And Glazers bid £400 million for the IPL team, says Arnish. And 442 is a dinosaur formation, says Zuls. And they lost the IPL bid, and it was not £1 billion. It was much lower than that, says Nishant. And they're just trying to find another cash cow so they can get income after selling United. Yeah, well, I feel sorry for anybody who gets bought by the Glazers next, because, you know, once it's like a Dracula, it's like a vampire, isn't it? Once you've sucked the blood out of one corpse, you want fresh meat. So, especially in sport, they'll go, you know, that's how it goes. It's Native American. We're talking about India, the country, mate. I don't know what continent you're on, but we're talking about the Indian Cricket League, which is in India. That's not Native America. I feel the worst is yet to come, says Sohang, and Casemiro is Donny 2.0. United so easy to fleece, says John. And I mean, look, I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down that road at all, but you might be onto something. Why did Real Madrid want Casemiro to go? Did they want him to go? Did he force the move? There could be something about that. I don't know. Why do United question players who don't even start? Says Chris. And crazy not to play Ronaldo and Martial together. Bruno Eriksson can get dropped. What do you think? I don't see United playing with the front two. I really don't. And Glenn thinks we will invest in January because the league position will dictate it. Mate, I don't think there's any money there. I don't know why. I don't know where they found the money to go from Arnautovic and Rabiot for 30 million combined to buy Casemiro and Antony. But I reckon that was a one-off, and I think it was to do with somebody wanting to buy the club. I think that was blood money. I think the Glazers have financed something somewhere to buy those two players. I don't think they'll have any more money to do it, to be honest with you, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But interesting show as ever. I know it's a bit of a short one at 7 o'clock, but we can continue the chat on That's Football. I am going to be live there in about 5 minutes' time. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and I will speak to you over on That's Football in about 5 minutes' time. Speak to you in a bit. Don't forget, Boohooman, 40% off. Scan the QR code, use the code GoldBridge through the link in the description. You can get 40% off with Boohooman, exclusively through the United Stand. Loads of reasonably priced products in their Boohooman Active range, whether you're running, chilling, five-a-siding, whatever you're doing. Links in the description, 40% off with the code. Speak to you in a bit.